Hello. So we'll be doing the cubic function, but today we won't be doing the drawing part, right? On how to sketch it. We won't focus on that because for you to sketch it, you have to understand what I'm about to do. So for your cubic function, what you have to know is that the general formula of the cubic function is like this. Let me write it here. It's ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d. This is the general formula for a cubic function. We know about the quadratic function, which was ax squared plus bx plus c. This one we know it and it's easy, but we will be combining that one and the linear one. So we'll be combining these two. Right? These two make up the quadratic. So it means every time for us, before you sketch, you have to factorize this cubic. And when you factorize the cubic, you will get a quadratic and a linear. And then this quadratic will further factorize it. So at the end, you should be having 3 linear expressions, right, for you to be able to sketch the cubic. Right, we come to the sketching, as I said, that if you don't understand how to factorize the cubic, then it's a problem, right? So before we go to factorizing and stuff, there are two important theorems that we have to understand. We have the remainder theorem and and we have the factor theorem. So I want to quickly the factor theorem and the remainder theorem. I want to quickly tell you about these two and how they differ and why they are important. So your factor theorem is your remainder theorem. Let me start with your remainder theorem. Your remainder theorem is when you have a certain value, which is the value of the remainder, right? And the value of the remainder is obtained by substituting, let's say, how can I explain? Okay, in simplest terms, when let's say you have something of this nature, you have cx minus d. We divide the cubic function by cx minus d. I repeat, we divide the cubic function by cx minus d, right? And it gives us the remainder of I don't want to confuse people. So always we want to find the x value. So if they said solve for x here, obviously x would be, if this was equal to 0, x would be d over c, right? So when we want the remainder, we are simply substituting this c is equal to d over c into the cubic function. When we substitute d over c into the cubic function, what we find, the answer we find is what we call the remainder. So that's the remainder theorem. So in simplest terms, the remainder theorem is the value of the remainder that is obtained by substituting d over c into the polynomial, right? The polynomial in this case being our cubic function. So when we substitute this into the cubic function, that is what we get, right? So when we substitute it, instead of f at x, we will now have f at d over c. So what we will get, that is your remainder. So that is the remainder theorem. What's nice is that they won't ask you to prove these things. So the factor theorem is saying that the factor that we will get, it should give us 0. If the remainder is 0, then what we substituted, it is the factor of that cubic function. I repeat, if when we substitute this and we get that the remainder is 0, what we substituted, it is the factor of that, what do you call it? It is the factor of that polynomial. I hope that makes sense. and I'm not confusing you, right? It's easy stuff, easy stuff. So let's assume that we're given something of this nature. I want to quickly touch on it. So let's say you are given that f at x is equal to 5y to the power of 4 plus 16y squared minus 15y squared plus 8y plus 16, right? And you are told that you have to substitute 2, right? So if you substitute 2, or let's say you substitute 1 in this case to make things easy, if you substitute 1, f at 1, right? F of 1, y to the power of anything is 1, right? So that would be 5, this would be 16. Where you see y, you substitute with 1. So that would be minus 15 plus 8 plus 16, right? So 5 plus 16, that will give you 21. 21 minus 15, that would give you 6. 6 plus 8, that will give you 14. 14 plus 16, that will give you 30, right? So it means that 30 is your remainder, right? Is 1 your factor? No, we only said this will be a factor only if it will give us a remainder of 0, right? I hope that makes sense and I'm not confusing you. So using the very same polynomial, we have to ask ourselves, is y plus 4 the factor, right? So always when you're given y plus 4 or y minus anything or a factor in this form, you have to give it, remember that when it's given in this form, that it is equal to 0. So y is equal to negative 4. We are testing negative 4, not plus 4, right? You always change the sign. So meaning everywhere where we see y, you should put negative 4. So when you put negative 4, and if you will find that the answer, if you substitute with negative 4 here, if you find that the answer is 0, then it means that y plus 4, it is our factor because the remainder will be 0. So you will do that with your calculator, right? You will do that with your calculator. It's that easy. It's simple, simple, simple. So then let me show you how to find the factor. How to find the factor, right? We do it by trial and error. I'll show you the easiest method to find the factors. So let's assume that they give you something of this nature. They tell you that it is, you're given something like 2x to the power of 4 plus 3x squared minus 3x minus 5x, sorry, 5x plus 7. And then you are asked to find the factors of this thing, or you are asked to factorize this thing. Always, you must check, always for you to be on the safe side, check the factors of the last term. So the factors of 7, it is in this case, it's 1 and 7. And then for each factor, you put plus minus and plus minus. These are the things that you will, this is what we call trial and error. These are the things that you will substitute and find the one that will give you 0. That is the one we want. Why the one that will give us 0? Because then that will be giving us our factor, because the factor is the one that should give us a remainder of 0, right? So then we'll start with, you always start with the smallest, right? So we will start with plus 1. Remember, when we start with plus 1, we are simply saying that the factor is x minus 1. Because I told you that plus 1, you take this to the other side, right? So we are simply saying that if we are saying we are going to substitute plus 1, we are simply saying that the factor is x minus 1, right? I hope that makes sense and I'm not confusing you. So this is the way you will go about solving this thing. We call it synthetic division. Synthetic division is the easiest one. So you put your 1, right? You put everything as it is, but only take the coefficients and their signs. So you put 2, you put 3, negative 5, and 7, right? Let me erase it. So you take the factor, right, that you think is correct. But you do an educated guess because you're using the factors of this one, of the last one. So you take the coefficients as they are with their sign. So the first thing that you will do, you always drop the first one as it is, you drop 2. So you multiply 1 and 2, that is 2. You put 2 here. You always add. 3 plus 2 is 5, right? So you multiply 1 and 5, that is positive 5, right? And then it will be negative 5 plus 5 giving you 0, right? So 1 multiplied by 0 is 0. And then 7 plus 0 is 7. So since the end, the last one is not 0, because we want the last one to be 0, it means this is not a factor, right? It means that y minus, it means that the 1, x minus y, right? It means that this is not our factor, because when we substitute it, it doesn't give us 0. We want it to give us 0 on the last one. So what do we do? Then it means that one is out. What do? We try another one, right? Another one should be what? It should be negative 1, right? Everything remains, but the only thing that will change now is what? Is this negative. So we drop it as it is. The coefficients are still the same. We drop it as it is 2. Negative 1 multiplied by 2, that will give us negative 2. 3 plus 2 plus negative 2, that will give us 3. It's basically 3 minus 2, that will give us 1. What is 1 multiplied by negative 1 is negative 1. What is negative 5 plus minus 1, that will give us negative 6. What is negative 1 multiplied by negative 6, that will give us 6. 7 plus 6, that will give you 11. Still, it's not the correct one, right? We continue until we find the right one. Now we are left with plus 7 and minus 7, right? So we erase until we find the right one. So it is minus 7. Now let's start with plus 7. You drop this one, the first one is this always. And then this one, it will be 7 multiplied by 2, that will give you 14. 14 plus 3, that is 17. This will be a huge number, right? So you do that until you find the correct one. So let's try with, and if you don't find with the factors, right, then you have to go to other numbers. But let's try with negative 7. So we drop 2. So this will be negative 14. 3 minus 14, that will be negative 11, right? Negative 11. Still, this will be positive 77, and negative 5 minus 77, that will give you something like 72. And obviously, if you multiply, it won't give you the remainder, right? That is 0. So it means that all those factors, it means that x minus 1, x plus 1, x minus 7, and x plus 7, they are not factors because they are not giving us the remainder of 0, right? They are not giving us the remainder of 0, right? So we want the one that will give us the remainder of 0. So let's take, for example, another one. This is what we call trial and error method, right? But most of the time you will find it easier, but you always start with the coefficient. So let's say x cubed plus x squared minus 9x minus 9. So you're given something like this. Obviously, you start with the factors of 9. That will be 1 and 9 and 3 and 3. So we always start with this 1, will be plus minus, and plus minus 1, plus minus 9, plus minus 3. Those are the factors that we should try and put. So let's start with negative 1. We put negative 1. So we put the coefficients, it's 1, it's 1, it's negative 9 and 9, right? Those are the factors, the coefficients. So you always drop the first one, which is 1. So negative 1 multiplied by 1, that is negative 1. 1 minus 1, that is 0. Negative 1 multiplied by 0 is 0. Negative 9 plus 0 is negative 9. Negative 1 plus negative 9, that is 9. So that 9 plus 9 will give us 18, it won't give us 0. So it's not the correct one, right? So what do you do? Since it's trial and error, you erase everything. Now we exchange and we start with what? With plus 1, right? So you drop the first one, plus 1 multiplied by 1, that will give you 1, and then 1 plus 1, that will give you 2, right? So 1 multiplied by 2, that will give you 2. What is negative 9 plus 2? That is negative 7. Negative 7, 1 multiplied by negative 7, that will give you negative 7, and that will give you 2, right? So it is also not a factor. Good people, I just realized that I made a mistake. Check it. It's negative 9, but here I put positive, so it should be negative 9. So that is why we are struggling to find factors. Sorry for that. So we go back to minus 9, minus 1, right? So that was my mistake. You drop, the first one is 1, you multiply negative 1 and 1, that will give you negative 1. So negative 1 plus this, obviously it will be minus, so it's 0. Negative 1 multiplied by 0, that's 0. And negative 9 plus 0, that's negative 9. Negative 1 multiplied by negative 9, that's positive 9. So negative 9 plus 9, that will be 0. So you see that the last one is 0. So it means that the correct factor is minus 1, which is x plus 1, right? Because if it's negative, you change the factor. So x plus 1 is the correct one. So how then do we go about factorizing if we now know that the correct one is x plus 1, right? So now that we know that the correct one is x plus 1, then what do? You will use what we got here. The first one is for x squared, the second one is for x, the third one is for the constant, right? I repeat, this is for x squared, this is for x, this is for the constant, which is c, always, right? So now that you understand that and we know that our factor is x plus 1, how do we go about writing that? It will be x plus 1, open bracket. This is for x, remember, so it will be just x squared because it is 1. You don't have 0x, so we skip, then it will be minus 9, right? So those are the factors. And then from there, what do you do? From there, what do? You simply factorize the second one, which is your quadratic. So it will be x plus 1. You further factorize this one, it will be x minus, it's telling you that it's plus and minus, it's 3 and 3. These are the 3 linear ones I was talking about, right? It's that easy. So it means that x, remember all of this is equal to 0, right? If you want the y, the x-intercept, you must let y be 0. So it will be x plus 1 is equal to 0, or x plus 3 is equal to 0, or x minus 3 is equal to 0. So this one will be 3, this one will be negative 3, this one will be negative 1. These are the factors, right? So these are the correct factors. I hope that makes sense and I'm not confusing you, right? So it's that easy. It's that easy. Don't overcomplicate things, right? Easy, 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 easy. So now I want to give you another one so that we try and find a factor, right? So let's take one that is a little bit complex, because I want you to be comfortable with finding factors first before we can go on to sketching, because sketching will be then easier if you know how to find the factors. So this one is 6x cubed, and then it's minus 5x squared, and then we have minus 17x, and then we have plus 6, right? This is obviously is equal to 0. So the first step, you go to the factors of the last one, it's 6 and 1 and 3 and 2, right? So others, you can see that if you put 1 here, there's no way you get 0, right? So we skip 1 for now, go directly to 2. Otherwise, you can put them in the calculator before even coming to this step. So with 2, we will start with, let's start with positive 2, right? So you put the coefficients, it's 6, it's minus 5, it's minus 17, and then 6. So you drop the first one as it is, it's 6. So 2 multiplied by 6, that's 12. Negative 5 plus 12, that's basically the same as 12 minus 5, which is your 7, right? It's 7, and then 7 multiplied by 2, that's 40. So negative 17 plus 14, that's 3, right? So 2 multiplied by 3, that's, this is negative 3, sorry. So 2 multiplied by negative 3, that's negative 6. So negative 6 plus negative 6, that will give you 0. So since this is 0, it's telling us 2 is a factor. So since it's positive 2, it means the real factor is x minus 2. So we go back again. Remember, this is for x squared, this is for x, and this is for the constant. So what do? We go back. After we now know that the factors will be x minus 2, and then it will be 6x squared, this one, and then plus 7x minus 3. These are the factors, right? These are the factors. And then from there, what do? From now that we know what the factors are, from there, what do? We factorize the second one, right? So it's x minus 2, the second one. Sometimes the second one you can't factorize it, but we use the quadratic formula. But for this one, we know that the factors, we want a number that will give us the middle term. So the factors of 6 that we can use is 3x and 2x. And we know that they have to be, you have to have a negative and a positive. So for us to get the factors of 3, obviously is 3 and 1. So we will get 3 multiplied by 2, that will give us 6 squared. But you have to multiply 3 with to get the middle one, which is 7. Obviously, you have to multiply with a higher number, which is, if we can multiply 3x with 3, we will get that, and then here we have 4, because it will be 3 multiplied by 3, giving us 9, and then this 2, it will be giving us 7. So now we have to decide which one is negative and which one is positive. If this is negative and this is positive, it will be 3 multiplied by 3. That will give us, since it's positive, it will be giving us 9x. 9x minus 2, it will be giving us 7. So these are the factors. From there, what do? Simply x minus 2 is equal to 0, or 3x minus 1 is equal to 0, or 2x plus 3 is equal to 0. So this one, x will be equal to 2, or x is equal to, take this to the other side, it will be 1 over 3, or x is equal to, take this to the other side, it will be negative 3 over 2, right? So those are your x-intercept. Remember, when you want x-intercept, you let one be 0. So these are your x-intercept, these are your coordinates. It's 2 is to 0, 1 over 3 is to 0, and negative 3 over 2 is to 0. And then you used this to plot, because finding your y-intercept is easy because you let this be 0. So your y-intercept will always be the last element, right? So it will be 6. And then I will tell you how to sketch. So now I will give you expressions, and then you use the very same method to find the factors. And then if you can do that, and then from there, we'll move on finding another how to sketch. So I didn't quite understand what you meant by the one fraction giving you problems. Give me an example of one, or maybe this video will help even to solve those. But if you can still give me an example of one to show me exactly what is challenging you, so that I do exactly that.